Welcome to another episode of Blue is the New White. I'm Josh Zolan, as most of you know. Today I have the privilege of talking to Mr. Joe Andrade of Gem Plumbing. He was introduced to me by Eddie McFarland. Some of you may have seen that podcast that I did with him. If you haven't, make sure you check it out. It's definitely a good one. But I'm excited to sit down here with you today, Joe, and talk a little bit about the trades and your journey through them and what you might have to say to the people about it. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is great. I love talking about the trades. I like talking about how we got into them and how we can help other people kind of get exposed to the trades. So like you said, my name is Joe Andrade, Vice President at Gem Plumbing and Heating Services here in Lincoln, Rhode Island. Mom and pop owned business since 1949, and we kind of do a little bit of everything. So plumbing, cooling, drain cleaning, you name it, we pretty much do it.
Nice. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get started?
So I actually grew up in Lincoln, Rhode Island. Lived here all my life. That's actually where the shop is located. I have a daunting 7-minute ride to work every day and home.
It's like me.
Yeah, the commute is very long. But yeah, definitely grew up here. Went to high school here. Started getting, exposed to the trades in high school, and then kind of fell back on them. Got a funny story about that in a little bit. But yeah, I've been working here since 2002 and never looked back.
Awesome. Very cool. So let's talk about your high school years a little bit. Obviously, you said the business has been operating since, 1945?
1949.
1949.
Yeah,
okay,
yep.
So 1949. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
It's safe to assume it's a family business of sorts, which means you probably knew about the trades in high school. So, so that's going to answer my question about how did you know about the trades in high school. We can skip that one. But how did you then end up getting into them? How were they depicted to you, by your family, and what led you to get into those trades?
To be honest with you, just starting off in high school, it wasn't really, I hate to even say this like this, but it wasn't really kind of glorified that, the trades was an excellent career to go into. And, we dabbled in a little bit. And I tell everybody when I tell my story to some of these young guys coming in and when I talk at schools that I was the typical shop kid. I did every shop class that they had. They offered woodworking, metal fabrication, welding. I had automotive under my belt, and that's truly what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an automotive mechanic. I had dreams and aspirations of going to, working at a Ford dealership one day, owning my own shop eventually, but being a mechanic. And in high school, you were just exposed a little bit to it. Nobody really explained the apprenticeship program to me. No one explained to us back then what the trades could really, give you as far as a future in them, and the many different paths that you can do. So I actually left high school wanting to be a mechanic, and was told by a lot of family members and a lot of teachers that I should really go into computers. That's computers of the future, and you should really go to college. And again, I told you I was the shop kid. I worked very well with my hands. Always liked to see things and figure out how they worked. And, I was really technically inclined, and I did it. And I think that was the biggest mistake I ever did, was going to college. It was a waste. If I could go back in time, I would keep that money and buy a nice car or a pickup truck and go right into the trades. And
I hear that a lot. I hear that all the time.
Yeah, and I thought it was the right thing to do. Everybody told me it was the right thing to do. Get into college, get a college degree, because no one would want to hire you if you didn't have a college degree. That was ingrained in me. And I had honors classes for math. I was in English and all that other stuff. So I did very well in school, but it was, again, ingrained in me that you weren't going to go anywhere in life if you didn't have a college degree. And, college actually made me dislike school, dislike learning, to be honest with you. And I went to a technical college too. I went for computer science, computer engineering. I actually started in computer programming. and I switched out of it to go to computer servicing, which was more hands-on, building circuit boards and hardware of the computers and getting my A+ certification. And I came out of school, and I remember graduating, wondering what I was going to do. And my father-in-law owned a large towing and recovery company and auto repair. And I said, if that's the worst case scenario, I'll fall back on that and go back to what I love doing. And I ended up meeting Larry through my father-in-law, who was the owner of Gem Plumbing and Heating. And he took me on board. And I actually started off maintaining his fleet. So, college, looking back, wasn't really a waste because I had the best of both worlds. I had the computer experience, the ability to network, to get computers online and really digitize this fleet for this plumbing company that had everything written down on napkins and Post-it cards, right? And I still was technical enough to know, how to fix some of the vehicles and where to send them out for larger jobs. So that's where it actually snowballed into me getting into the trades, was working for a plumbing company, doing something else. And, I was helping a lot of people, and I understood the business. If a truck goes down, the sense of urgency you need really to get that truck back on the road, making money. And I started going out on some of these jobs and helping these guys. And I loved it. I just loved it. Some of the school jobs at night, night work was available, and hey, why don't you take the kid from the shop and we'll start going. And, I joke around with everybody because I started moving up within the company. I had taken over the fleet and I had taken over the warehouse. So I'm moving these parts around daily. I'm touching these parts. I'm managing people that are getting these parts out to these guys. And I'm like, man, this is good stuff. Like, I really want to learn more. And maybe I'll go to school to learn, what they're doing so I can help them get these orders together a little bit better. So it's funny, for a guy who hated school, I have not left school since I left school. I've been in school ever since. And, I started going out more at night with some of the guys. And Larry, I tell people all the time, Larry was a genius. So Larry put me on salary. And Larry said, hey, if you want to learn the trades and you want your apprenticeship, do it on your own time. Free labor. But we always kind of joke about that. But, I ended up liking it. I was doing my day job, which was managing the operations for this plumbing company. But I was moonlighting on the weekends and at night with these guys, helping them, doing service calls and large construction jobs and really just learning. And I mean, it just opened up so much for me. And, when I talk to these people here, I tell them I got out of school to get back into school. I have never stopped. And I just said that with you a few seconds ago, but I even went back to school for business because I thought one day, hey, I want to go back to college to get my business degree, because one day I want to either run a business or I want to actually own my own business. And I got all my trade licenses. I got multi-licensed in multi-states. And I ended up really liking the trades enough to where I've kind of been involved and have never stopped. There was a boiler class last night that I just sat in on, just because you can always learn. And it's so many different avenues and paths. And now, it's afforded me to move up in this company, but I've also opened a school here and teach some of the younger guys coming in, younger guys and girls that are coming into the trades. And we have our own apprentice school here right in Lincoln. So the guys can get their apprenticeship here and they can learn. And, it kind of just snowballed. And even though I work in the office all day, I love getting out there and kind of helping the guys. I think I can still do things, and I think I can do more than I can sometimes, the guys that do it every day. But, there's something to be said about the accomplishment and the sense that you have inside when you put a boiler in, or you put a water heater in, or you put a plumbing system in, and you take a step back and you look at that and you say, that's what I did. I did that. I built that whole thing, and that was me. That's what I got to show for my 8 hours today.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, working with your hands and being able to physically, manifest something and see the results of what you're doing. There's a lot to process there with what you said, but, a lot of the narrative hasn't changed, with people thinking that, college is really the only measure of success these days, and that's a huge topic that I write about in my book, is that, you know, the perception that college is the only way to become successful is, it's dominating. I mean, I heard the same thing when I was in high school. In order to be successful, you have to go to college. And I was senior year, I was called into the counselor's office, twice a week, as it got closer to year's end, saying, hey, you're very vocal about not going to college. I really think you're making a huge mistake. And I'm like, well, I guess we'll see in 20 years. I mean, what do you want me to say? But that's a really great story, and one I hear a lot, uh, kind of relating to you is, you could say you arrived by accident but stayed on purpose. Which is I think what happens very often with people who especially have a great admiration for this craft, which is amazing to me. That just tells me that we don't know how much talent is being left on the table, of kids that don't know that this industry exists, don't know the opportunities in the industry, and don't know that it's a viable career choice because it's just, never really talked about. Uh, so that leads me into, you did go to college. Did you end up graduating college, or did you quit college the first time?
No, I actually graduated twice from college, and that's really good. It's not really talked about and promoted, and I feel that, that's my, I so much. I wish I could go back in time and read the as much as everybody else wants to do it, but it's just, I just try to get in front of people and tell them the options they have in front of them, because it wasn't clear to me. I didn't, I had electrical 101, I had plumbing 101 in high school and stuff, and I had the basics, but no one told me like you could make a great living off this. And and I have a young child at home that's 10 years old, and we're preparing him for the future. And in my household, I'm very fortunate to have somebody that's, parenting with me and my wife, that is okay. Like, you can do whatever you want. You want to go to college, that's fine. We'll help you get to college. If college is not for you, that's okay too. And I joke around all the time, because you hear relatives say, all the time, this is just a small little joke, and they get angry at me, you have to go to college, Matthew. And I say, no, Matt. I said, the only problem with being a plumber is your leg starts to hurt after a while. And they all go, why? Oh, because you're always run down and you're always working. I said, no, because the amount of money you have in your wallet, and you're walking around being a plumber, it was like, it strains on your leg. And
I like
no,
that.
yeah, no one really has told us that plumbing is a very lucrative trade, and again, it just doesn't end at plumbing. I was very, very fortunate to be employed by a company that does so many things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, you said you had plumbing 101, electrician 101, all of these classes in high school, which, to be quite honest, don't even exist really anymore,
Right.
along with shop class and things like that. So it's almost like over the last decade, we've, taken steps in the opposite direction, which is also amazing to me. Um, and so it's hard to imagine what people really value, that are educating a lot of these kids, because it's what impression that they themselves have, which is one of the reasons why I try to talk about this intelligently, and put it out to educators and parents and things like that, because those are the people who influence, the children, like you are obviously, influencing your son. And I think you have a great perspective, with if they choose to go to college, great. If they don't choose to go to college, great. And I'd like to add to that by saying, I'm sure you're going to do the same thing that I'm doing with my daughters, is make sure that they understand, what a college education is necessary for, and what it isn't, because I think that's a big thing too. That the skilled trades offer, whether it's plumbing, or HVAC or refrigeration or cooking equipment, whatever have you, a lot of the times I hear when people go to college is because they made the conscious choice that they wanted to advance their career. They start in the trades, and then they say, well, okay, I love this career. I love this trade. This is how I can advance. I'm going to go to college to learn this now because I understand what I want to do in the future. You ask an 18-year-old kid, they're just relying on what other people are telling them to do, and how other people are telling them they need to achieve success. But the trades can offer an opportunity for them to figure that out for themselves and then choose a college education. And then the ROI in that instance is so much better than those just pushed into a direction, kind of like you were with computers. And to spare you, I won't tell anybody about the technical difficulties we had before this podcast.
No, you're absolutely right with that. And and that was I was that 18-year-old kid that didn't know what to do, was relying on other people to give me direction about the real world. Again, I was leaving the house. I graduated high school. Now I'm get let out into the real world to get a job and to go to college to find myself. But like you said, it's funny because I started when I was doing my second year of apprenticeship for Rhode Island Plumbing, I was going to school for business, but I was tailoring that business into financing, and I was going for taking classes of Laura contracts. Here I am writing service tickets. How do I do it right? How do I do it correctly? How do I train the next person that's riding with me or working with me on how to do it? And again, I knew I had a purpose at that point on where I needed to go and what I needed to get stronger. And I think Eddie said it in his thing, you always sharpen the sword, you know what I mean, on what you want to do. But just from that, I had a clear direction. I had a purpose. I knew exactly what I was doing. And I tell you this much, I didn't miss any days of college, as the first tour of duty I did. In society, it's funny, I tell this to everybody, when you go to buy something, you go to buy a car, you look at what car you want, you look at what options are in that car, and then you look to see who has the best financing and who gets, who has the cheapest price, right? We all do that, and we constantly research it, and we try to get the most bang for our buck. With college, with me, I was paying for something and not getting my return on investment on it. I did not want to be there. Again, some of the classes that I took, again, over my head, and it just really wasn't applying in the real world. And the second time I went around, when I found plumbing and when I found what I wanted to do in life, I was able to tailor to what I was weak on to fill those gaps. And I really had a purpose. And, and I try to be, and what I guess I'm getting at is I try to be that person, whether it's my son, my daughter, or it's the 18-year-old kid that's in high school that wants to pull me aside after my presentation on what the trades have done to me, to really help them to reiterate what you said, to show all the cards on the table, that what's available to them and what they want to do. And again, just mention it again about the company that I work for. I was very fortunate, and I do that a lot with a lot of the newcomers that come in. Sometimes I hire for a good attitude first and foremost. You get somebody that wants to learn, great attitude, shows up early. You try to basically try them out in different areas. It's so many times I've hired an HVAC tech who's gone into plumbing, or vice versa, or was going to just because they got to ride with somebody that day, because quite frankly, we were just short. We needed a hand in that area. Joe, I'm rethinking everything. I'm in school for plumbing. I'd like to leave, and I'd like to go into electrical. And, you're jockey around apprenticeships and ratios and schooling. But again, we were able to afford that to people on another level here, and I think that's big. I think if I had somebody going and explaining to me thoroughly, like, hey, and you said it, they're taking away the trades. We have a labor shortage. Everybody knows this. It's a growing joke. We all joke around with it. There's nobody coming into the trades. We have people retiring, but the schools know this, and they're actually taking away those classes. I mean, welding, I could weld, fix a car, and just for people that own their first house. I mean, there's so many things that I learned to this day, how to read a tape measure, and we're working with the school here in Lincoln too. And we're working with the math teachers. The math we learn, we got to change that, just the way, real world math, fractions. You give a guy a fraction and he freezes, or you give him a tape measure. I had a plumber on the job tell me it was 3/4 strong. I was like, how strong is that pipe? Like, he couldn't read the lines on the tape measure because it wasn't taught to him. And I remember that, learning that was the first thing we learned about in shop class, how to read a tape measure, how to set a level. And we're actually working with the high schools now to teach real world math, business math, fractions, how much water fits in this half-inch pipe that's 10 feet long, all these formulas. And that's what we're really trying to do, is prepare the workforce coming out of high school. One, telling them it's okay. It's okay not to go to college. It's okay. And I'm sarcastic, if you guys know, if you get to know me, but I always say it's okay not to have student debt and be rich beyond your wildest dreams. It's okay to be a plumber. And I always sell that dream because, I tell the people my life story. It's afforded a great lifestyle for me. And if I could do it all over again, I would go back with Michael J. Fox in my DeLorean, and I would go back to high school and get my apprenticeship day one.
Yeah.
Day one. And, and that's what we do. We go to high schools and we really set this out. And it's, you do the career fairs, but really to drill down and to explain to them, listen, once you get into plumbing, it doesn't have to stop at drain and water pipes. It can go to radiant systems. It can go to heating, hydronic. It can go, it can just, you can be a manager one day. You can be a project manager. You can manage people, projects. You can own a business one day. There's so many things that literally can spiral out of, even in HVAC. I got guys that walk around, they're the cleanest guys. We joke around, they have laptops and they just commission units all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very smart, technical, and it's just one branch. Who would have thought, 10 years ago we would be commissioning VRF systems the way we're doing it, and fixing building management systems with a laptop instead of going on the roof and putting your gauges on something. Yep. So again, I tell my son all the time, I don't take my job lightly. We're the guardians of people's health. Plumbers really protect, it's not something I take lightly, something that we do. And I tell my guys, we have licenses, we have code to keep us in check, but we do something wrong, you can pose a health risk to somebody. And, we're pretty important. And I think the stigma out there, not as bad as it is today, but 10 years ago, they look down on the trades, which is, not right. And, I put us up there with lawyers, doctors, all the white collar people that you're out there, because, we can do some damage if not trained right. We could, we could definitely kill a family if we don't vent something. And again, something we don't take lightly. We definitely train up, and we should be considered one of the top tier jobs in the world, in the nation as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are the ones that make civilized lives possible, right?
Absolutely.
And it's taken for granted because it's seen so often. You can't throw a rock in this world without hitting something that's a result of the trades. I say that all the time, and it's absolutely true. But,
yep.
I think basic psychology, it happens with anything, right? You surround yourself with something so much, you eventually take it for granted. At least some of us do. And I think that's what's happening almost on a national level, is everything that you see. This office, everything in this office is a result of the trades, and everything outside in that parking lot is a result of the trades. Somebody had to lay that blacktop. Somebody had to wire those lamp posts. Somebody had to plant the grass, maintain it. You could go on and on and on about trades. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of people just don't know about it, because it's white noise at this point. And I really love what you're doing with the school systems by implementing a practical application of, say, mathematics. I think that's incredibly important. And at the heart of it, it's so easy to do, right? It requires no more budgets. It doesn't increase the school's risk. It doesn't do any of that. All it does is introduce real world applications into what's already being studied. Same thing, I propose that they do some sort of theory of refrigeration in physics class, and it's the same idea, the same concept. Why not get people to understand, what all of this stuff is during their day-to-day curriculum while they're going through high school? What's the downside? There is none.
Right.
It's better than, learning about things that are only theoretical, are completely made up in some of these textbooks. Johnny has 3 apples and, Susie has 2. If
Yep.
Susie leaves the room and Johnny doesn't know, who Susie is. How many apples does John have? It's like, a lot of it doesn't make sense, including me. I don't think I made sense just then, but
No,
that's
no,
fine.
actually, believe it or not, then that makes two of us because I followed you on that one.
So
But you're absolutely right because they should be teaching we business math and the basically fundamentals. Again, at the very least, these people that are coming out of high school, they're going to own homes one day. They're going to work in business. They need these skills. I think they're part of life skills. And some of it, the math is really, when you put something into an application, you understand it more. And that's what I don't understand, why we're not doing it. And again, you said it best. It doesn't cost us anything. All you're doing is you're skipping probably a year of my time teaching that, and we can get really onto how to vent this plumbing system that's here, or how many fixtures can we put in this bathroom group, and we can get really right down to the brass tacks of the job. And that's what we're really trying to do, because like you said, they're taken away from high school. I visited my high school, and they converted that into classrooms, and the shop is gone. There's no woodworking class. There's no welding, casting, brazing. They don't do any of that now, because they're worried about health risks and people getting hurt. So they took that away. So, I said to the math teacher, I said, what can we do to really just use what we got, and we can present these guys, get me in there early, get me in there before the college counselors. I had that counselor. You haven't signed up to college, Mr. Andrade. Where are you going? Where are you going? Where are you going? And the SATs, the pressure of this test, the SATs, the PSATs. Again, some people don't test well. I see it with the guys. They're amazing plumbers, and we have these tests that we have to take for our licensing that doesn't even apply to some of the stuff that we're doing on a daily basis. But, again, to have that early on to prep that, I think that was another thing Eddie said too. If we don't do something every month or something, we get reprogrammed some way, somehow, that we're not ready for it. So when this test comes in, and it's just, it looms over these guys' heads too. And I've seen it so many times, some of these apprentices that we have, and, why aren't you going for your test yet? You're ready to take the next leap. You're an amazing plumber. You're ready to go into a truck. You're holding up your future right now by not testing. And they're just nervous to take the test because of simple things of math are on the test. And it's sad. It's sad.
yeah, no, it is. It's that old adage: if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to live its whole
Yes,
life thinking it's stupid, right?
exactly.
And
Yeah.
we're judging a lot of fish by how well they can climb a tree. I mean, to be honest, and so it's that mindset and that perception that I think that we have to change. So on that topic, what do you think? I kind of could guess what your perception of a tradesperson was in high school, but what about your peers? What about people these days? What do you think the most common perception of a tradesperson is?
It's changed. I'll tell you, from 10 years ago to now, it's changed just in the last 10 years. And part of that, I was a part of that change too. Going back, 15 years, the perception of a plumber was this butt crack, lowly guy that would bend over your sink and fix this, greasy, dirty, couldn't string a sentence together. And, Gem as a company, we wanted to change that, and we called them technicians, and I joke around, we called them the milkman suit with the white shirt and the pants, but we were all uniformed, and we got made fun of. We had this campaign that we actively tried to change that persona and out here, but we coined the phrase the smell good plumbers. We started with a slogan. I had people coming up to supermarkets wearing my uniform, sniffing me, saying, "Oh, you do smell like brownies." We used to have these tacky commercials on TV that, we were the smell good plumbers, but we showed up on time. That was the other stigma. You can never find a contractor, you can't manage time, and they never call you back. So we answered the phone on time. We were in uniform, drug tested, background checked. And then we did one step further. We wore shoebies in the house, and we used to get made fun of. But now, moving ahead to now, everybody has shoebies. Everybody's background checked. Everybody is putting the mat down when they put their tool bag down. And it's funny you asked that question, because I had a police officer say to me, oh man, I wish I went to school for being a plumber, become a plumber. You guys must make so much money. I did it all wrong. And now I have people coming up to me saying that we're here. I think we've finally arrived after all this time from even 15 to 20 years ago, what we were kind of perceived as. It was right down there. We weren't regarded highly, but the thing I tell people, and when you were going through that story, is everything in this room was touched by a trades. Next time the lights go off because you have no power, what happens? I mean, you get emotionally upset. You lose it. You don't know what to do. Next time you turn on your faucet and no water comes out, and no hot water comes out, and it's like people panic. And I have to tell this to my technicians all the time. When we walk into a water heater and it flooded their basement, we need to have a little bit of empathy, because these people think it's the end of their world. To us, it's a 45 to an hour job, and we're going to get them hot water while we're doing our paperwork in the truck, and no big deal, on to the next one. But it's devastating. But I think it's perceived now at a higher level that we're right up there. And I always tell my guys, look, you're no different than a lawyer or a doctor, a dentist. You're up there. Like, you're pretty important. You have the final say here. A hospital, well, water, electricity, it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to go so well. So a lot of people are counting on us, So I think 20 years ago, we were perceived at a lower level. And I have people coming up to me saying now, like, wow, you did this all from plumbing and heat. And this is hard work. And there's plenty of work out there. I joke too. There was that robot on LinkedIn that they had the demonstration putting the sheetrock up.
Yeah, saw that.
Yeah, I said, you know what, guys, we still got it down. We still have it down. No one's going to replace our hands. No one can go in and do what we do right now. And based on how that robot screwed in that drywall, we got some time.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note that, even if a day does come where robots are capable of doing some of this stuff, it's going to be the tradespeople who are fixing those robots.
Agreed.
And that's the bottom line. And I think you're right. As people grow up and as people mature, and they kind of see the evolution of people who have gone into the trades and the route that they took, their perception slowly changes of what it means, to be a tradesperson and to be in this particular industry. However, I don't think that's the case with today's high school kids. I think that they still have perceptions of what it means to be a plumber, what it means to be an electrician, or a service tech. It's just kind of like you said it at the beginning of this podcast. It's not glamorous, and they don't see it as such. But I think it's up to us, right? The ones in the trades, to educate them based on what they do value. So for instance, you've got all these guys out there, Tony Robbins and Gary Vaynerchuk and all these guys talking about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is on this pedestal right now. Every kid and, every state wants to be an entrepreneur. That's the thing, right? But nobody sees at that age how a career in the trades can lead you to become an entrepreneur. I didn't know, but look at me today. I'm the CEO of an Inc. 5000 company, and I couldn't have done it without knowing how to turn a wrench, and I think that's kind of an idea that we need to unveil to these kids and to the general population, that, it's not about fixing the piece of equipment. It's not about all of that. It's about being able to find anything that you're passionate for within the trades, because there are so many different trajectories, right? And you're not limited to one thing. Kids have this idea being a plumber means, fixing the same toilet 50,000 times. And that's not the case. I mean, you're a perfect example, right? You never stop learning. And that's the key to anybody who's ever been successful, is to never stop learning. As Eddie would say, keep sharpening your sword. And that's just it. It's just amazing that there's so many different opportunities within, this industry. And so many people seem to not know about any of it. So with that being said, what would you say that the biggest lesson is that you learned in the trades?
Um, well, humility for one. Uh, it's you think you know it all until you don't, and I probably the biggest lesson has been along those lines of you never stop learning. You can never. And just as new products come out, who'd have thought we would be pro pressing copper fittings and mega pressing gas, threading pipe. I have some of the older plumbers saying, hey, you don't know what it's like. We used to have to pour lead joints and stuff, and no, I didn't, but I remember I used to thread pipe, and now we don't even do that anymore on some jobs. But it's kind of a testament that you always have to continue to kind of keep improving and learning and having an open mind, because too, I say the humility part because you can always pick up something and you learn something from others. And I think as long as you have an open mind, I think again, it just makes you more of a well-rounded tech and even an individual in real life. So I don't know if that made sense. I was all over the place with that one.
No, that made perfect sense. I agree. I think humility is one of the biggest lessons that the trades can teach. Not only because every day is a new learning experience, as my dad would say, it's not just a job; it's an adventure.
It is.
And
Yep.
it really is. And not only that, but even in the customer service aspect of it, right? Because the trades can teach as many soft skills as they can hard skills. Hard skills being the ability to turn a wrench, and
Yeah.
soft skills being able to communicate. So we are up against not only just day-to-day interactions and dealing with both good and troublesome customers, but we're also battling that perception from them, right? Because a lot of times, I mean, the only reason they're calling us is because they don't know how to do it themselves,
Mm-hmm.
which means that they don't understand everything that goes into it. So you have to really be you have to have a lot of humility to be able to explain that to them, especially if they are pressing with it, right? And they sincerely don't want to pay a bill because you were there for 55 minutes and you charged them for an hour, and or whatever it may be. We've all been in those situations, but you have to try to see things from their point of view. So empathetic, I guess, is probably a better way to describe that. But I think it plays into the humility portion because you do have to try to do it with a level head.
You definitely do. And it's funny, you get that all the time when you're explaining stuff. And I also tell people, be proud of what you're presenting to for price. Think about that, the water heater, how long, and I know in Rhode Island, just speaking Rhode Island, I had to go to school for 6 years after work to get my license, two licenses, to be honest with you, to put that water heater in. And I know I've only been there for an hour. You're telling Mrs. Jones this, but I went to school for 6 years to make sure that this was important. This was put in right. This is going to vent right. You're going to have hot water for years to come. And I tell guys all the time, don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed to telling people that. When you start adding the years again, and that's what goes along with my whole speech about we're up there with doctors, right? A lot of these colleges are 4 years, and I went to two-year schools. So the first tour of duty, I call it, took me 3 years for a 2-year degree. Because we were all finding ourselves, right? So, but the second again, but I've been in the trades longer, and I've been in school longer for the trades than I have in college. And I'll tell you, once you write it down on paper, you don't even realize it because it was so enjoyable for me. I think that was the other part of it. To able, and again, having that having that ability to look back and appreciate what you just did with your hands and have that instant gratification, I think really goes over well. And again, people are starting to understand that more because things start to be more complex. You have your YouTube, you have the internet where you can Google, and everybody can be a HVAC hero, I call them, and you can clean out the screen on your Navian. But when it really gets down to it, that's when you have to call somebody knowledgeable in that area of expertise. And that's why I think we're more up here now and we're being perceived because of the years of schooling and because of the amount of trainings and certifications that we have to get. I always tell guys to always be proud of that. Tell them you should boast about that you did go away to Nashville to get certified in lock and bar. You went there and got certified in this, that you're the tech to fix it. And that's a good feeling with to have those calls that you go through. And I think the customers nowadays are starting to understand that more and more. I think they really do. I have less objection to pricing and less objection to guys being there for the time. I think they actually start to appreciate the time, the less time spent on a problem fixing it because of the years of experience we have. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the transparency probably helps too in this day and age with social media. And I mean, even this podcast, kind of being able to bring this stuff front and center. So it really helps people to understand. And the fact that we can blast it out on a, basically worldwide platform now,
yeah,
it helps people to understand that. And I think to your point as well, you know, the trades give a lot of people purpose. you know um Me, for instance, the trades gave me purpose. Before I got into the trades, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do. When I started to do that and I realized it wasn't really what I wanted to do, I had no idea what I was going to do. So I came out here to Arizona to work with my dad, even though I had no clue what he did for a living. I knew he turned wrenches, but that's about it. And but once I started doing it, and I kind of got into the habit of hard work and humility, and just being able to see how what I do every day affects those around me. How I was able to help people with their problems, and how I was able to consistently learn. I mean, I felt like I had purpose at that point. And that's really what fueled me to keep going. I think the same can be said for a lot of people in the trades. It gives them something uh, to value within themselves.
I agree with that. And it was kind of cliche because one of the guys that I was training with, we would go to a call and we put hot water in, and I talk about this all the time. The woman, I remember the woman's face, her world was devastated just because of a hot water tank. And, we left that job, and it was kind of like one of those Lifetime original moments in the truck with my lead tech. And he was telling me, he said, you don't know what we just did for that woman. We just made her day. We're here to do a job, but it's much more than a job. And again, like circling way back to the first conversation, if you just get in front of some of these high school kids and just tell them some of that stuff, I mean, we do things all the time that get overlooked. We do things all the time that, just go unnoticed. But I think once you do something, you put AC in for a elderly community that just had heat, and you're doing a change out by putting VRFs in, and you have that person come up to you and say, my goodness, this summer is going to be great now. I have AC, or I have that makes you feel better. And that just makes you want to work harder. And I think that says a lot with all the guys. And I have a lot of young men and women that work for me that, again, they didn't really know what they were doing and where they were going. But when that aha moment comes to them where that happens, man, you see them in Starbucks now on their iPads. And you're like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just looking at this wiring diagram. Do you know this does low ambient temp? And you're like, don't you have cable? It's one of these things where they get driven, and again, it makes you want to do more. It makes you want to learn more. And like I said, Josh, I blinked. I've been in school for the last 15 years until you add it all up and the amount of time it's taken. And I've enjoyed it just because I have a purpose. I know what my purpose is daily. If a hospital calls or a child center calls, I know that it's that sense of urgency, get there to fix the problem. You walk out of there with a hero. You're a hero. Everybody's like, man, thanks again. You solved it. And again, that goes light years beyond, working a 9 to 5 office for me. That to me means the most, or even a
Yeah.
family member. You save the day, giving that family, heat and hot water. You got to think about it too. A lot of these guys and girls are selfless people. They're leaving their family in the middle of a snowstorm. They're leaving their family in the middle of the night because it's their on-call shift to go help another family to get them heat and hot water. And sometimes people get a little angrier when they don't have AC, but you're helping another family out. You're leaving your family to help somebody else. So I think that's pretty big.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. At the heart of it, that's what it is. It's helping people. Um, so if there was one thing then that you could say to our listeners about choosing a career, let's assume our listeners are in high school and they're unsure what they want to do after. If you could say one thing to them about a career in the trades, what would it be?
Um, Again, I'd have to say whatever they choose and whatever they went to look into, it just never stops there. I think it keeps progressing. It turns into much more, and it's definitely a career that could sustain you over a lifetime. I look at this, and not a lot was said to me in the beginning, and not a lot was known to me in the beginning. But what I can tell you and what I learned is that this trade is ever growing, and I don't think it's going to stop where it is. I mean, I went through some of the examples today of what somebody can go to, even if it's just a plumbing company or if they latch onto a company that does a little bit of everything. There's so many different routes you can go, and you could have an enjoyable, working career for yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing that could be said. And you can do anything you want to do. And even if you do go to college for those 4 years and you want to get out of it to working, that's only just going to help you. I have some of the smartest, brightest people that work here and are in the trades that you mentioned it. There's so many things that go into this soup with soft skills and hard skills and just overall money management classes, business classes that really I touch it all. I really do. I'm exposed to everything on it. And I think if anybody listening getting into the trade, especially those in high school, definitely look into the trades because it could just branch out into so many different situations for you where you will be happy in what you do.
Absolutely. Oh, I agree 100%. So last question I have for you, and sometimes this is hard to answer for people, sometimes it isn't, because a lot of it we kind of cover in the meat of the podcast. But personally, how do you define success, and how have the trades enabled you to find personal success?
So success and how they help me, I'd have to say success comes with a lot of times with, what money can't buy, because money can buy anything. And with the money you make, I think the success comes when you can actually take somebody on and mentor them. And I think you feel really good about what you do and how you help somebody. Um, I even hate to say this, but sometimes people grow up without a father figure, without somebody in that or mentor that could really help somebody navigate through to life to help them. And I think success is defined when you take that person or you help that person, whether it's in high school, and you arrived and you're successful when they come back and they're better than you. And I think they're more successful than you. And I think of some of the people that I helped at convenience stores and taken them out of department stores, and now they are just like, I call them for help because they are just light years above where I am. And I think that's what basically you think you define success in the trades, when you've taught somebody and given them enough and helped them on a path on where to go and really just guided them, and they did it on their own. I tell people all the time, I kind of put my foot in the door to open it up for you, but you kicked that thing in, man. You just ran with it. And I think that's what success is for me. I think you look at a lot of people that you helped and you continue to help. And the key is never to stop. The key is never really to stop. And if I can save somebody $120,000 in debt and paying those student loans and make a good living and make them feel like they're well off themselves, then yes, then that's success to me. So
Absolutely. That's a great answer. And I agree 100% with exactly that. I mean, there's so much pride to be taken in helping somebody better their life in whatever aspect you can, especially when it's being able to teach them to love, the things that have made you successful.
yeah.
And that there's no greater feeling. So with that, we've come to the end of the podcast. So before we take off, tell people how they can reach you, And if there's anything else you want to add, now's the time.
So yeah, you can reach me. I'm on askgem.com, which is the company website. My email's up there as well as on LinkedIn. So if there's anybody that would like to learn more about the trades and just have a general chat about the trades and any direction they might be in and where they want to go, I'll be more than happy to help them out, talk to them about it, tell them my own experience, and if I can give any advice on what not to do. I've made a lot of mistakes, so I'm the resident expert on that. So, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, Joe, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to me about this. And I really think people are going to enjoy this episode.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Take care.